Welcome to the SABR Report here on Houston City Beat. I'm Mike Acosta alongside Joe Thompson, the president of the SABR Houston Larry Dierker Chapter. Joe, welcome in tonight onto the SABR Report.
Hey, well, nice to be here, Mike. Nice to talk to you again, and hello to everybody.
That's right. Well, baseball season is here. This is the perfect time. We've been talking about adding the SABR Report for some time. And opening day is Thursday, which if you're watching this, for us, it's tomorrow. If you're seeing it later, we're talking about Thursday. But opening day is finally here. The Astros are back in Houston. They played a couple of games against the the Space Cowboys. They have all that Space City stuff. They're kind of throwing me off now. But they're back in Houston. They're going to play Thursday afternoon at 3:10 p.m. against the New York Mets. And just touch a little bit based on the Astros. I think they're a little bit in some transition. What do you think?
Well, Mike, to be quite honest, I'm probably one of the biggest Astros homers that you'll probably run across. I believe personally that this team, as it stands right now, as long as no injuries really kind of hurt us, and if our pitching is okay, I think we're just as good as we were last year.
Yeah, I think that the team is really strong. Of course, if you look at the record, they were 88-73 in 2024, and that was the first time that they had fell below the 90 win mark since going back for some time. And of course, they were swept by the Detroit Tigers out of the AL Wild Card Series. It was the first time in many years that they didn't make the league championship series. There's talk about the player development system, the minor league pipeline that's coming up. Of course, for many, many years, that is what fueled the Houston Astros. They were able to teach players that were coming through the system the Astros way. And so many players learned that and bought into the culture because, like you said, they're going to have to stay healthy. That's always a big part of it because having talent alone for a baseball team, as we all know, is not good. You can just go ask the Yankees. They buy talent every year, but talent doesn't win the championships for you. You do have to have depth on the team. You have to have health, and you have to play fundamentally sound. And the Astros are going through kind of a transition. They are as good, I believe, even with losing some of the players, most notably Alex Bregman. What did you think about that over the offseason?
I personally, I kind of got annoyed with the story a little. Bored with this.
I think a lot of people did.
Then I kind of got bored with the story. I was like, "Come on, somebody just make up their mind." But I could kind of understand from the Astros' point of view what they were thinking. Is Bregman going to come back? Maybe Jim Crane, Dana Brown were just not willing to just give him the kind of money that he wanted. So believe it or not, I got to a point, especially once we signed Paredes and then Christian Walker. I'm like, well, I love you, Alex, but I don't think you're going to come back. And I think it will hurt us from a leadership on the field point of view, or because he sort of last year he kind of took on that role. I think as a leader. Maybe not quite as much as Carlos Correa did a couple of years earlier, but I kind of noticed that when I was watching a lot of the games. But we will kind of miss that, and I wonder who's going to kind of step up and be that leader on the field.
I agree. I think that Alex Bregman being there, if you go back to the first World Series championship in 2017, and then his upbringing, as we talked about players coming through the Houston system and having a winning mentality and having just a culture that there's this next man up, that you have this winning mode, that they work as one. Alex Bregman was one of the key leaders on that team. And of course, Jose Altuve, where Jose Altuve goes, usually the Houston Astros do too. He's one of the main leaders and he's there. I think Dana Brown did extremely well in the moves that he made, including the Kyle Tucker trade to address the Alex Bregman dilemma, because that's really what it was. It wasn't just, hot stove league talk. It actually became a dilemma for the club because you have to put the best interests of the team ahead of everything else. And when things are just dragging along, you have to move along. So to see Bregman in a Boston Red Sox uniform, personally, I wasn't really surprised to see him go to the Red Sox, but you see, and I think there was a spring training photo out there of you mentioned Carlos Correa and Bregman were on the same field at spring training, and you see a comparison of them now versus them when they were both at the Astros, and it just reminds you of how unique the past several years have been of this Astros dynasty.
Yeah, it sure has. And I think, and I'm glad you said dynasty, because again, I really believe it is, to me, probably but again, this is Homer Joe talking. I mean,
That's okay.
To me, it is the 21st century version of the Braves.
Yeah.
The Braves in the 90s.
That's a great comparison.
But I think we really are that dynasty. And, people talk about the Giants or the Red Sox and, how many championships have won, or even the Yankees compared to us. But what we did over that course of time, 7-8 straight LCS in a row. We kind of had hit a bump last year. But I don't think, personally, I don't think the dynasty's over with. But again, that could just be me talking. And it really goes well. I think it really works because the players that Dana Brown and Jim Crane are replacing, the ones that are leaving with, are not I wouldn't say it's a step back. I say it's a retool, a reload. As opposed to just, let's just kind of start over. We had our run, and I think it's just a retool. So I think the winning, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be here for a little bit longer.
I agree. I think, you can talk about, I don't think the term rebuild is anywhere near the Astros because they have addressed the third base situation with Isaac Paredes, and then also Christian Walker, who's a legit first baseman that we were kind of missing. I know we had John Singleton in there for a while, and he was just released yesterday from the team for the second time in his career. But I do believe this is, I think what we're seeing is a little bit different because we're used to seeing players come up through the system and they get situated. See Jeremy Pena or some of the outfielders that have come in and they've come through the Astros system. And this is really the first time in a good while for the Houston Astros where they've taken pieces of other teams, quality pieces that I think, and they're slotting them into the major league roster here. So I think that they are they're well positioned to have another good season and contend for that AL West title once again. And speaking of which, do you remember back, I talk about this with a lot of really young people sometimes where, back in the 90s and in the 80s, especially when I was a little kid in the 80s, and then of course in the 90s, when the Astros would win a division title, and back then in the 80s, they were in the National League Western Division, and then the National League Central Division in the 90s, when they won those division titles, the city was ecstatic. They were completely excited. It was like going to the World Series. But the fans in Houston over during this dynasty, this golden era of Houston baseball, they really have come to see with winning 2 World Series championships and 4 American League pennants in there, winning the division is mainly a stepping stone now. And it's still great. There's a lot of teams, like I said, there's a lot of teams out there today. If they win the division, it's a big celebration for them. But for Houston and Houston fans, it's almost just kind of expected to win the division instead of, going in through the wild card or, having some sort of dominance. So it's I think that this is going to continue. The winning ways are going to continue. They're going to have to stay healthy. And one of the exciting things here is Cam Smith. Cam Smith is now, he gets traded in the Kyle Tucker move, which at the time, I know a lot of people were talking about missing Kyle Tucker, but I think it was a great move by the Astros to trade Tucker at that time to get some value. And we've seen that. Now, you probably have heard this before, But, a wise baseball man once said, never judge a player based on what he does only in March or in September, because at that point, he's really incentivized to try to make a roster. You really want to see what a guy does as they get into the season. We want to see what a guy does out of the chute. How does he adjust to the major league pitching? Cam Smith is going to see that. A great player. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad you said that. And we spoke about Bregman not that long ago. And coming out of the chute, I mean, you can kind of, if people remember when Bregman came up to the majors league, he had a lot of problems. I think he went, I don't know,
it took him a long time to get a hit,
or 2 for 40 or 0 for, I don't know what it was. But then Bregman really sort of took off. And the only thing I really worry about with Cam is more not necessarily Cam himself, but everybody online. The social media craze, and I just hope I know he's young. I just hope he can kind of stay focused or something like that. But I have a feeling that if he kind of doesn't jump out to the start like we saw him in spring training, then people will be like, "Oh my goodness, did we make a mistake?" But I think the Astros are in a situation where it's bringing him up as a right fielder. I really think it's one of those things where it's like I think it's a good gamble because our outfield is kind of not necessarily the best, but we do have Chas McCormick. Now we could talk about the left fielder a little bit later, but I think Cam is just one of these really exciting players that baseball, in my opinion, better notice real quick. But he didn't have a lot of minor league experience. What is it, like 42 games or something like that?
Yeah, it was like 32 games in the minors total.
Right, and he was drafted last year when he played at Florida State or something like that. But I think people are starting to pick up with this idea is, maybe we don't like some of the moves Dana Brown does initially, but some of the stuff he's doing is turning out to work out pretty well.
Yeah, so, I think so.
I hope Cam Smith gives Astros fans everything that I hope that he is capable of. And if we get just a little bit of what we got in spring, I think right field will be fine.
Yeah.
Offensively anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he hustles. You saw the game the other day, a couple nights ago. It was his first game ever in a major league ballpark at Daikin Park. And he hits a liner down the first base line into the right field corner. Right. I thought that the right fielder played it a little slow, that it normally in a major league game, you probably would see that right fielder get to that corner a little bit faster and make a stronger throw. Cam got a triple out of that. I think in a major league game, he's probably going to get a double. Nonetheless, he was hustling around that as he went around the horn and he went into third base. He had a lot of energy. And it's good to see that right now.
Yeah. I think the players will feed off that too, because that they see that hustle and they know that, hey, this young kid is really, it's kind of this Astros baseball mentality where I feel like over the last couple of years the team has gone along so well. I think that's one of the reasons they've been so successful is their chemistry, and I think They'll talk with each other, and they really start to feed off of young kids' energy like Cam Smith. And we know Altuve can do what he does. We know how aggressive he is, but I think people, that they will feed off each other. It's in a sense, Altuve's not really that outspoken leader, but he leads by actions, and I think somebody like Cam Smith has seen that maybe over the years, and I think in many ways, all the players will really start feeding off each other. I think it'll work.
Yeah. And speaking of Altuve, there's our left fielder. We've had some great left fielders. He's over there. Altuve's 34 years old. He's going to be 35 in about 6 weeks or so. And, he's a guy that's technically, he's on a Hall of Fame path. For me, I kind of think of Craig Biggio when he moved over from second base to center field at Minute Maid Park primarily, and that was necessitated because the Astros had signed Jeff Kent, and Kent was going to play second base and nowhere else. So he had Biggio saw it and was the better man for it and moved to center field. But you see that there's some challenges. Biggio moved from catcher to second base. He was a younger player. He was able to move over there quite gracefully, and saw a little bit of trouble in the outfield. And we see a little bit of that with Altuve, but that's to be expected when Altuve hasn't really played that much at all anywhere in the outfield. But one of the things that stands out to me is that the left field wall at Minute Maid, it's not that it's a short porch, it's that it's a very high wall. So he's not going to be having to jump up a 7 or 8 or even 10-foot wall to try to grab a ball that is flying into the stands like you do in right field. He's going to be playing a ball that hits as a liner towards that area, right, that's going to carry him right off of that wall and bounce back onto the field. And hopefully he can make a strong throw back into the infield to the relay to get it back in there. So I think that if they look at it that, and I'm sure they are, what I'm saying is nothing new, but I think Altuve will figure it out. He's a professional player. Like I said, he's on a Hall of Fame path, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him out there this year.
Yeah, I think it will be. When this move kind of happened, people maybe they've heard or they haven't heard. I'm pretty sure they have. In this world of social media that we have, is this was Altuve's decision. He said, "Coach, I'll do whatever it takes." And I think initially the thought was to bring Bregman back, kind of shift Paredes or something like that over to second base or do whatever. But I think, as Dana Brown has said, maybe he's kind of embraced this challenge now of playing a new position because he thinks it'll be better for the team. And that is one thing that I've always respected about Altuve. With everything that he has been through personally, he is all about the team.
He is.
It is the Astros first, Altuve second.
Correct.
And you just have to root for a guy like that. You want that kind of player on your team. And I think people really have started to open up and seeing this about Altuve. Now, the challenge, of course, is going to be, these big league hitters know that Altuve is out there, and we'll do whatever we can to challenge that arm. Like, do we turn a double into a triple, or and that's something that I think Altuve will have to adjust to. But I have a feeling that when I first thought this, maybe Altuve will play half the games in left and then half the games at second. But the more this has kind of gone along, it seems like this is going to be maybe his permanent position or something like that. And I really kind of think it's going to be a permanent move, or at least the Astros think so, because they announced that Brendan Rodgers is going to made the team, and he was, I think, an all-star second baseman not that long ago.
Yeah, he was, and that's another, when you talk about the successful teams and getting through injuries, because you're always going to have injuries, even on the World Series championship type teams. You're going to have, even your best athletes are going to go through some sort of injury over a 6-month period. So you need to have that depth on there. So those guys can step right in, and hopefully he's one guy that can slot in there and make a difference. So that, I think that actually might be the sleeper move. I know some people were kind of discounting that, but that actually might be the sleeper move that the Astros have. And one last thing on Altuve, he kind of brings, and maybe it's because he's known, he's come through, he has respect for the Killer Bees, but he kind of brings that vibe, that Jeff Bagwell and Craig Biggio had in the clubhouse, where, like you said, it's Astros first and players second. It's just a class individual.
That's what I think so. And I think why people around the league kind of feel like, rightfully so, he really is the face of the club. I mean, he's not an outspoken face of the club, but his actions
Mhm.
makes him really the face of the club. So
and
that's the way he leads.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly the way Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell did it, and led by example and left it all on the field. So, Joe, that's so that takes care of the Astros right there. The opening day is Thursday, 3:10 p.m. against the New York Mets. There's a lot of things to talk about the Astros, and as we move along in these shows, we'll talk about what's happening with the Astros weekly and look at some of the games that they're winning, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that they have from week to week. And I'm really excited to take a look at that. So let's talk about SABR. And I know that there are some people out there who are not familiar with SABR, which is why we're doing this show here. SABR stands for the Society for American Baseball Research. It's a fabulous group. It's one that I have known for a very long time. And have gotten to know you through, and it's a fabulous group. So tell us, for somebody who is not real familiar with SABR, tell us all about it.
Well, I'll tell you this from my point of view. You know, when I was walking around FanFest back in 2010, I came upon this group or this booth, and I saw SABR. I'm like, wow, SABR, what exactly is that? And I remember Bob Durrell.
Good man.
Good guy. Good guy. He was the president of SABR. Kind of told me about, well, we are, well, when you think of statistics in baseball, you got to think SABR, but SABR's so much more than that. And Bob was right. You know, over the years I have learned, because again, I just love baseball for baseball. I always have. You know, going back to when I was a kid. I kind of fell in love with baseball. From a very early age, and just learning about the history of the game and the different players, I was in many ways kind of looking for something and looking for an organization that can kind of that would really kind of satisfy this need to learn as much about baseball as I can. And I walked up and I talked more and more about SABR, and it really comes to find out. And what I've really learned over the years is that I had the impression that SABR was just a bunch of people sitting around doing stats. That's what I thought it was.
Sure.
So I was like, this sounds cool. And Bob is like, no, just check it out. Here's our site. I mean, you're more than welcome. Come to our meetings. We have people like Bill Brown, Greg Lucas. We're named after Larry Dierker. And I'm like, wow, really? So I hear those names and I'm automatically light up. So come to one of our meetings. They happen to show up a lot. And sure enough, I remember from very early on, I walk in and one of the first people I see is Tal Smith.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I go up to, and Tal is just the nicest person in the world. And I'm like, here I am, this kid who's in grad school. And I hear about these guys, and then Dierker walks in. And then, Bill Brown. And, I'm like, I saw you on TV. I heard you on the radio. You're Mr. Astro. And just over the years, I've come to find out that these are just people that love baseball. I'm a stories guy. I'm not a stats guy. So SABR is really I like to tell people it's two branches of the same tree. You got the numbers people, which is important, of course, because it's in baseball, and you can't really understand baseball as deeply as you really need to unless you kind of look at the numbers. But on the flip side of that, it's also the stories. And it's the stories that I love, the stories like Jimmy Wynn, who came to our meetings all the time, and I got to meet Jimmy. And the stories of J.R. Richard and Nolan Ryan, and going outside of the Astros, the Mickey Mantles, the Fernando Valenzuelas, all these people that I heard about over the years, and you're just surrounded by people who just love to tell stories, and that's what we do at SABR. Again, we're just not a bunch of baseball nerds. We don't just sit around and do stats. Believe me, I don't do that. I'm all about the stories, and that's what I think draws people to SABR, really, because in the end, numbers are one thing, but I think it's just a love of the stories, love of baseball, because as a sport, baseball probably gives people more stories than I would say any of the other sports. And I just think that it's just a good thing. And that's what we do with SABR, really. The numbers are a part of it, but I think it's the stories that are a bigger part of SABR than the numbers. That's just me.
No,
that's who we really are.
I think you're right on with that. I think what, for myself as a historian and being a historian for as long, it is really about the stories. It's connecting the dots from one generation or one team to another. And what I think SABR does really, really well is that it humanizes the game. Like you were talking about how you're able to see Tal Smith and Bill Brown and all those guys in there that have worked in the game, and here they are telling stories, and they're just like anybody else in that group. And those meetings are a lot of fun. They're just fantastic to go. And you, of course, where you guys have the meetings is not bad either over at Spaghetti Western over there off of Shepherd too. That's some good food there too. But that's one of the things that I think SABR is really good at, is that it connects generations. And if anybody who is young or old who loves baseball, I spent 22 years working for the Houston Astros, and the greatest thing that I took away in those years were the people, the great people that were involved, and how they were just good people doing extraordinary things, and they just happened to be able to hit a ball, or maybe they happened to be an executive on the team, and whatever the role was, they contributed to what we were doing as a team. And that's the takeaway that I have. And that's the same feeling that I get through SABR, is that it humanizes and it brings out the best aspects of the game, and it really grounds it, to where you can understand. And baseball is of course a great American game, and it does a real good job at portraying that. So what are some of the things that are going on right now that you want to push out there to let people know about?
Well, as I'm sure a lot of people know, anybody that listens to this show, to your show, knows how much of an Astrodome fan you are. Well, we are also a big Astrodome, a group of Astrodome fans. We love the Astrodome, and this year marks the 60th anniversary of the opening of the Astrodome. And I thought about this last year. I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but because I've been with SABR for going on 15 years now. But I started to think about, well, what can we really kind of celebrate in baseball in this city in 2025? And I remember, hearing people talk about the age of the Astrodome and when it opened. And I'm like, well, sure enough, the Astrodome opened in 1965. I'm like, so why don't we as a group celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Dome all year round? And so what we have decided as a chapter is that we do chapter meetings pretty much every month. I think this month there's maybe only 1 month where we're not meeting as a group, and that's normal. But we and even in that month we're not meeting as a group. We're usually doing stuff, or we're going to the national convention or something like that. But what we've decided this year is to have, as part of our meeting, at least a presentation about the Astrodome. We have people share memories about the Astrodome. We have a newsletter as a group that comes out 4 times a year. We're writing stories about the Astrodome. Larry Dierker just sent us, an Astrodome memory for our upcoming newsletter that should be coming out in a couple of weeks. Everybody is kind of telling their stories of the Astrodome. And we had you speak to us in January, and we're just amazed at that. All the stuff we've heard you say about the Astrodome, we're still learning stuff about the Astrodome, and we're still talking about some of the stuff you said, like that river or that creek that went underneath the dome.
The stream, yeah.
That was just like, wow, I'd never heard that before. But this is the kind of stuff we're doing all year round. So we invite everybody to come out. And again, you don't have to be a baseball numbers person. You could just want to come and hear stories, and maybe you'll hear a story about a player that you haven't heard of in a while. One of my favorite guests as a SABR member of all time, and this happened very, very early in my SABR career, and this really kind of hooked me, is that Bob Durrell, I don't know how they did it, but Bob Durrell got Kevin Bass to come talk to our group. And my favorite team before the Astros World Series teams is the 1986 team.
Oh yeah.
And I was just sitting there listening to Kevin talk, and I was like, I got to stick with this forever, because I had a chance to ask Kevin a question and just listen to him tell stories. So that's kind of what we're doing all year. And I'm going to give a presentation about some of my most favorite memories of the Astrodome coming up in a couple months. Next month, we're meeting as a group at Constellation Field. We're going to watch the Space Cowboys play the Albuquerque Isotopes. And our special guest, we usually have our meeting at Spaghetti Western, but next month, we're going to have it on Saturday, April the 12th at Constellation Field. And our special guest is going to be the one and only Tal Smith, who's going to speak with us.
Amazing.
So, and Dierker has said he's going to speak with us. Bill Brown is going to speak with us later on this year. So, we're just celebrating the Dome all year. So,
well, cool. So if anybody wants to buy tickets, they want to think about joining SABR, is there a special link or go to the website or anything like that? Are they able to join in on that?
They could go to sabrhouston.org. They could email me, if they wanted to. But if you go to sabrhouston.org, and you'll find out that a lot of stuff about our chapter. If you go to chapter leadership, I believe, if you click on that link, it takes you right to, it just emails me directly. You can go to sabrhouston.org. That's our chapter website. Or you can go to sabr.org to find out information about really the national headquarters, SABRs.
Well, fantastic. That's awesome. So for those of you who are looking to get involved with SABR, like I said, it's a wonderful organization. You hear Joe talking about it. He is the president of the Houston chapter, the Larry Dierker chapter here in Houston. It's a very strong group, just a great group of people who come together for the great sport of baseball. Joe, thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you joining us on the SABR Report. I look forward to more episodes of talking baseball every week, every month as we go along, and we'll have some other special guests as well.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm happy to be here, and look forward to talking to you again. Go Astros.
Thank you. Yeah, go Astros. Opening day is coming up. We'll talk about it next here on the SABR Report.
All right, thanks.